to honor the memory of our fallen martyrs and renew our pledge to continue onto their path. Today we honor the memory of the fallen martyrs, the martyrs of the Islamic resistance in Lebanon, Hezbollah, the martyrs of the Lebanese factions fighting and resisting against the Israeli occupation, the fallen martyrs of Al-Qassam in Lebanon, Al-Quds Brigade martyrs in Lebanon, together with all the fallen civilian martyrs who were murdered at the hands of the Zionists, including journalists. I start by offering my deepest condolences to the families of the fallen here in Lebanon. We offer our condolences and at the same time congratulate you as your loved ones have won this honor, the honor of martyrdom. Many of you have lost loved ones, a father, a brother, or a son, and I pray to God Almighty to accept all our good deeds. We offer condolences and congratulations at the same time to all the families of the fallen martyrs in Gaza Strip, West Bank, and on every inch where our brave martyrs have fallen, including those of Al-Aqsa typhoon or Al-Aqsa floods that has extended on a number of fighting fronts. I will not delve much on this as we will celebrate the Martyrs' Day in a few days' time. However, I must reiterate that those fallen martyrs have won, and it is sufficient to go to our Holy Scripture, the Quran, to read what God Almighty said about them. And we are entitled to take pride in them. And we must remain firmly with certainty that they are rewarded with paradise, with all the rewards you never envisaged or heard of. As God says in the Holy Scripture, those killed in the cause, to the service of the cause of God, will be rewarded with paradise as introduced to them. Oh believers, if you support and work for God's cause, you will be rewarded with victory. The same in Al-Imran Surah. Do not think those fallen to the service of cause of God are dead, yet they are alive, joyful with what they have been rewarded with, without fear or grief, abiding in God's blessings that their good deeds were not wasted. So our fallen martyrs are not dead. They are alive, not in the judgment day where all the human beings will be resurrected. No, those fallen martyrs are now alive in God's paradise. Do not think they are dead. They are alive, but you feel not them. We congratulate all the fallen martyrs, the fighters, the civilians, the aggrieved, women, men, children, old and young. We congratulate them for this massive transition at the presence of God, paradise where there is no Israeli oppression or American hubris, no killing, no massacres, no pogroms. And from this firm conviction, we congratulate them, and to their families we say, your loved ones have fallen in a battle on the face of the earth, and if we are to look for a fully legitimate, lawful battle from the legal, ethical, or religious perspectives, we cannot find one, but that battle fighting against the Zionist occupiers. This is a seamless battle at the human, ethical, or religious levels. It is the most evident, the most honest, and the most noble to the service of the cause of God. This what must be established in the first place. We also say to the relatives of the fallen martyrs, we are proud of you. We take all pride in you. We have heard your statements of acceptance, submission for the fall of your loved ones. And here lies our true strength before the arms. Our true strength lies in our firm belief, unshaken conviction, our devotion and commitment to the cause. We are prepared to sacrifice. It is expressed in the voices of the fathers, mothers, wives, and children of the fallen martyrs. Equally enough, we salute the epic people, unmatched, unrivaled, the people of Palestine, the people of Gaza. We have seen them on TV screens. Man, woman, child, baby, crawling from underneath the rubble. Yet he cries out saying, all what is lost is to sacrifice for the sake of our homeland, for the sake of our cause. We cannot put this into words. We cannot express their fortitude, bravery, patience, and resolve. The same applies to the residents of West Bank. Patience, fortitude, and resolve. Ladies and gentlemen, today I will address you on the main topic in order to understand what happened and to make clear of our position and also identify the liabilities and taking into consideration the Lebanese affairs, which will require further details at a later point of time. At the beginning, we must also salute all those who took to the street in support and in solidarity with the Palestinians from all over the world, Arab and Muslim and Latin American countries, the peoples of different nations, specifically the strong and brave Iraqi and Yemeni arms who are now involved in this holy war. Why have we reached that point, and what is the backdrop of what happened in October 7, Al-Aqsa Typhoon operation? I will address bullet points in brief. It must be mentioned in order to build up our stand. The pain and suffering of the Palestinian people is not a secret to the whole world, and there is no point to delve in this. Yet, the recent years were harsh, especially with this radical, stupid, and brutal government of Israel. There are four main headlines on the Palestinian landscape. The first is the Palestinian detainees. Thousands of Palestinian men and women and even children are held behind Israeli bars, some for years. Many are on the verge of death, and no one is moving a finger. And with this radical government, this stupid minister made the lives of the detainees and their families even worse. The second issue is Al-Quds, Al-Aqsa Mosque, and what has been happening in the past weeks, namely the few days before Al-Aqsa Typhoon. These conditions were unprecedented since the occupation of Jerusalem in 1967. Third, the unjust siege laid to Gaza for more than 20 years, almost 20 years. More than 2 million people living in an open concentration camp without any person moving a finger in the whole world. The fourth one is the recent perils and risks hovering on the West Bank through the expansive illegal Israeli settlement under the auspices of this stupid fool government, in addition to the daily detention and demolition of homes. These are the key four headlines that have impacted the Palestinian and the Palestinian resistance, and no one in the whole world is moving a finger. The United Nations, Security Council, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, League of Arab States, European Union, none of the international blocs or organizations. On the contrary, the Palestinian cause and all what is happening in Palestine were totally forgotten. The whole world turned a blind eye to them. Totally abandoned, totally forgotten. In contrast, the policies of the enemy are more ferocious, oppressive, humiliating. Therefore, there must be a big event to shake this oppressive, occupying, usurping Zionist regime with their backers in Washington and London, and to reopen these humanitarian issues before the eyes of the whole world, and to resurface the Palestinian cause, the just cause, as the focal cause to the whole world. Then came that glorious jihadi operation of October 7th, Al-Aqsa Typhoon. The operation was triggered by the fighters of Izzuddin al-Qassam, supported by the fighters of other Palestinian resistance factions in Gaza Strip. This operation, so this is the first point in the backdrop of the event. This glorious, blessed, large-scale operation was 100% Palestinian in terms of decision and execution, 100% Palestinian. Even the Palestinians have kept it secret, even from their fellow Palestinian resistance factions in Gaza, let alone other resistance factions across the resistance axis. That element of secrecy was a linchpin to this emphatic success of the operation. It came as a surprise, shocking surprise, unlike what is assumed by many, namely those who would like to drive a wedge among us, unlike to what's been assumed by many. That type of confidentiality and secrecy adopted by Al-Qassam did not anger us here. It was a requirement for the success of the operation. And this operation has no bearing on any decision or move to be taken by any other faction along the resistance axis. This move taken by Hamas have stamped the true identity of the battle and also precluded all the enemies and hypocrites to raise any false claims, especially when they speak about the relations between the regional resistance factions. At any point of time when there is a battle, they start to speak about the Iranian nuclear program, the US-Iran negotiations to serve the Iranian interests or agenda in the region. False claims. Yet, Al-Aqsa Typhoon was 100% Palestinian in terms of decision and execution. The secrecy in which the entire operation was shrouded proves that it is a totally Palestinian cause for the sake of Palestine and the people of Palestine, and it has no relation at all to any international or regional issue. This operation also proves what we have been reiterating over the past years. Let the foe and friend understand. Let it be understood by all enemies and friends that the decisions of the resistance factions is in the hands of their own leader. Since the Iranian Revolution, from Khomeini to Khamenei, have always been openly adopting and supporting resistance factions in Lebanon, Palestine, and in the region. However, they do not exercise any form of authority or mandate on these factions or in their command. And what happened with the Al-Aqsa Typhoon proves this fact. And those who are willing to interpret what is taking place today and what's going to take place in the future, that the true decision makers are the leaders of the resistance themselves to the service of their top and true cause. Ladies and gentlemen, the third issue I would like to speak about, the repercussions of this event. What's been happening on the battlefield, I believe you are all closely following. No doubt, it was a brave, heroic, creative, perfect, massive operation, commended at all fronts and at all levels. What are the repercussions of this glorious operation? It caused a seismic shake, an earthquake in terms of security, military, politics, diplomatic, even psychological. It has very profound strategic, existential repercussions that will continue to have bearing on the presence of this Zionist entity and its future. No matter what the enemy's government has done over the past days, and no matter what they will do over the coming days, cannot change the impacts and repercussions of Al-Aqsa Typhoon strategically and historically on this Zionist entity and the future of the conflict in this region. This operation has lifted the lid and uncovered many facts. However, speaking of the repercussions, the glorious repercussions and effects of this glorious operation requires hours, if not days. However, what's more important, it has exposed the frailty, weakness, and total fragility of Israel, more frail than a spider's web. I have read some reports on the Israeli media that the Israelis themselves have come now to believe, more than someone, meaning myself. The Israelis have come to believe that Israel is more frail than a spider's web. This fact was established and cemented by Al-Aqsa Typhoon operation. The United States administration, represented in their president, ministers, state secretaries, and even top brass, to support this shaking entity in order to get some breathe, get back on its feet again, and to restore some action and to take the initiative, which he has until now. And they had it to provide all forms of protection and support. The swift response by the United States to support and back Israel has proven how failing Israel is. From the very first days of Al-Aqsa Typhoon operation against a totally besieged Gaza Strip, the Israeli government was in a dire need for the U.S. fleets to navigate to the Mediterranean for military and psychological support. Where is your fleet? Where is your warplanes? Where is the invincible army of Israel, the mightiest in the region? Where is all that? The United States hurriedly dispatched warplane carriers and other pieces of their naval fleet. The U.S. top brass generals, military experts running to the area to open the strategic weapon depots for the Israelis. From the very first days, Israel demanded new weapons, new missiles from the United States. From the very first day, Israel demanded $10 billion Is it a strong state? Is it an invincible army, as claimed? A state that required that amount of US and Western support? Heads of state, heads of governments, defense ministers, top brass generals flocking from all over the world to provide moral support. This is what Al-Aqsa Typhoon has caused to this frail entity. These are some of the profound impacts of Al-Aqsa Typhoon operation. All these must be evaluated and analyzed in detail, which we don't have time to. Yet, we must understand that all the sacrifices offered in Gaza, West Bank, and at all fronts are really worthy. All these sacrifices, all these achievements, outcomes, and repercussions deserve all these sacrifices simply for the reason that it paved a way for a new slate in our conflict with the Israeli enemy. It paved the way for many countries and nations within the region. There was and there is no other option. The other option is silence, waiting for more oppression, more siege, more death, more killing. This was the other option. That's why we can say that the decision was wise, brave, prudent, and worthy of all these sacrifices. The next point: how was the enemy's response to Al-Aqsa Typhoon operation? From the very first hours, it was clear that the enemy was lost, stray. You know, it's a Sabbath day, and this was a perfect timing by the commander of Al-Qassam. It seemed that they have had a long night, drunkards, not only in Gaza envelope, but also Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. It took them hours to come out. They came out in historical state, angry, in an insane fashion. That's why when they had to recapture the settlement within Gaza envelope, they perpetrated massacres against the Israeli settlers, not Hamas. Now we start to hear and read reports and investigations providing evidence that it was the Israelis who perpetrated the killing among the Israeli settlers. And in the near future, when the dust settles, the whole world would come to know that all those killed within Gaza envelope were killed by the Israeli army itself, who was acting insanely. In the wake of this big seismic event, it seems that the successive government of Israel do not learn the lesson. Unlike we always hear that Israel is learning the lesson, here they are. They never learn from past lessons or experiences, especially their experiment or experience with their wars against resistance factions in Lebanon and Palestine. What is taking place today took place in the past with some differences. In July 2006, in the successive wars with Gaza, at a different scale and different levels. Among the gravest mistakes committed by the enemy in the past, and it is taking place now, is setting high goals that they cannot achieve. Setting high goals they cannot reach. They set as top goal to annihilate Hamas, the whole of Hamas. Then, speaking of toppling the government of Hamas, then eliminating the leaders of Hamas, then the military wing of Hamas. Now they are claiming to have as a top goal to annihilate Hamas. And when they started to wake up, they now speak about another goal, to bring home the captives. Those who have had a long experience with different resistance factions in Palestine and Lebanon throughout history, have you seen at any point of time the Israelis capable of releasing their captives without negotiations? Never. What happened in Lebanon 2006? They declared as the goal is to annihilate, to wipe out Hezbollah. They were backed by the United States and the whole West, including Arab states. Their goal at that time was to wipe out Hezbollah from Lebanon and to bring home the 2 Israeli captives. The war extended for 33 days. Neither Hezbollah was wiped out, nor their 2 captives released without negotiations. The same thing is taking place today in Gaza, yet with a difference, and the difference is the massive pogrom, the massive amount of destructions and killing. In July war, 1,150 houses leveled, thousands of fallen martyrs. Yet, the resistance fighters at all fronts, backed by the Lebanese people, stood their ground. The enemy, step by step, gave up on his goals. What's taking place in Gaza Strip today proves the stupidity and impotency of the Israelis. They are wreaking killing among civilian Palestinians in Gaza. Most of those killed are women and children. The majority of the victims are civilians. Churches, mosques, school buildings, even hospitals are not spared. Everything is legitimized. Entire neighborhoods are wiped out. School buildings, places of worship, and the whole world is standing by watching. Does this require an invincible army? For a whole month, the Israelis failed to produce a single military achievement. And when they started the ground operation, the same scenario of July war in Lebanon, the random shelling, displacement of citizens, and the killing and the falling of thousands of martyrs could not bring the resistance to their knees. Then, at that time, the Israelis started their ground operation, and to them, our fighters stood up to them. And the whole battle was followed by the whole world. The same thing is repeated in Gaza. The Israelis are trying to launch a ground operation in order to sell to the whole world that they are launching a large-scale ground operation. Even the limited moves taken by them were met by the bravery of the Palestinian resistance. We have all watched this resistance fighter approaching and placing the explosive on the top of the tank. How do you think the Israeli troops will be able to fight among those brave fighters? Nothing but confusion, fear, and frailty. What the Israelis are good at over the past 75 years is nothing but perpetrating pogroms, massacres, with the aim of exercising pressure on the leaders of the resistance to wave the white flag. And I believe the scenes we have been witnessing every day, every hour, every minute, women, men, children crawling from underneath the rubble, crying out and saying, "We are holding our ground. We are standing tall. The end of this battle will be nothing but your defeat. By killing innocent civilians, you will not achieve anything." All what's taking place in Gaza Strip, seen by the whole world, reveals and proves once again the brutal, barbaric nature of the Zionist regime of Israel, the usurping, occupying force that was planted in our region in Palestine on the grounds of the ill-fated Balfour Declaration, to feed on wars in the region, targeting Palestine and the Palestinian people, followed by the Egyptians, Lebanese, and all the peoples of the region. After all these long years, as they tried to convince the whole world that this entity is a state of rule of law, humanity, democracy, this is all proven false. We have witnessed victims, men and women, innocent civilians, the children of Gaza have unmasked the truth of this barbaric regime, backed by the Western media, who are trying to convince our peoples to remain silent or even normalize with the Zionist entity. This also reveals the direct responsibility and liability of the United States. Also, the U.S. hypocrisy. From day one, Biden claims to have spoken to the Israelis about humanitarian issues, civilians. All false claims. For a month, Gaza and the Gazans have been reeling under the brunt of barbaric, ferocious, brutal, ruthless, merciless aerial bombardment. They falsely claimed that Hamas beheaded babies, and they failed to produce a single piece of evidence. Yet they remain silent against the images of thousands of babies and children torn apart in Gaza as a result of the Israeli missiles. Now all exposed, the whole West claiming and preaching about democracy, humanity, rule of law, It's nothing but hypocrisy. It is a lynch law. We are living in a jungle. We all must establish this fact. The United States is totally responsible for the war raging in Gaza against unarmed, defenseless people. It is the United States that vetoes condemnation of Israel in the Security Council. It's the United States that stands on the way of a ceasefire in Gaza. It is the United States proving once again, as described by Khomeini, it is the greatest Satan, the great devil. From Hiroshima to Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, Palestine, the United States must be held liable and then penalized for all what it has been perpetrating against our people and the peoples of the region. And there comes the decision by the Islamic resistance movement in Iraq to launch offenses against the American bases in Iraq and Syria, considering that the United States is controlling the war in Gaza, and it is the United States that must pay the price for the crimes perpetrated by the Israelis in Gaza and by the Americans in Iraq and elsewhere. It is a wise decision by the resistance fighters in Iraq. Prudent, blissful, and wise decision. Yesterday also we heard about new measures against the occupied Palestinian territories, and this will be revealed on the coming days and hours. And here we salute all those noble men, noble fighters who are lending a helping hand to their fellow resistance fighters. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the duty of every free nobleman in this world to establish and reiterate these facts in the public opinion warfare led by the Western media that is falsifying and misinforming the public. We started to see the public opinion shifting as the whole world witnessed women, defenseless women and children torn apart. This is the least we can do in this battle, the battle of right against false, the battle against ferociousness, brutality, and barbarism, represented by the United States and Israel. Supporting Gaza and the Gazans is the least humane requirement. Those who took out to the street in support, who rally, those who donate, let alone those who fight, are under the duty towards Gaza and Gazans. Those who remain silent must reconsider about their faith if they claim to be religious, and their honor if they claim to be honorable. Each and every one, all and each, must live up to his own responsibility. Speaking of which, in 1948, when the whole world abandoned the Palestinian people, this Zionist entity came to existence and pushed, and the people of Palestine and the peoples of the region have paid the price of the establishment of this Zionist regime. Not only the Palestinians, the Egyptians, the Syrians, the Jordanians, Lebanese have also paid the price. Lebanon has taken a bigger toll as a result of the existence of this usurping, occupying Zionist regime. This is an established fact. And again, today, what is taking place in Gaza is not a war like the others. It is not a battle like those of the past. It is not an event like those of the past. It is a decisive battle, historical one. What is after this battle is never like what is before. This dictates that each and one shoulders his own responsibility. Speaking of which, we must set the near-term goals, which we should all work to achieve. The first goal we should work for day and night is to end the war on Gaza. The second one is to enable Gaza, the resistance fight in Gaza, and particularly Hamas, to triumph. These are the two short-term goals. We should not lose sight of these two goals. The first, to cease the war, cease the aggression on the grounds of humanitarian, ethical, religious, lawful grounds, which are unquestionable. The second one is to the interest of everyone. It is to the interest of the Palestinian in the first place. It is to the interest also, as some are misinforming the public. Some are claiming that if Gaza triumph means that Iran will triumph. If Gaza triumphs, it means that Muslim Brotherhood will triumph. This is false. The victory of Gaza means the victory of the Palestinian people, the victory of the Palestinian detainees, the Church of Holy Sepulchre, as well as Al-Aqsa Mosque. It is a triumph to all the peoples of the region. There is no time to delve in details, yet it is sufficient to indicate that the victory of Gaza is to the interest of Egypt. It is to the interest of Jordan. It is to the interest of Syria. And before all that, it is a national patriotic interest of Lebanon. And I believe this has been demonstrated enough over the past days. What if the opposite? What if Israel triumphs? What if resistance is defeated? What are the repercussions of the regional states on Palestine and on Lebanon in terms of security, politics, grassroots, popular level, and demographic level? Now, Israel is throwing threats to Lebanon and the Lebanese people. They are sinking in Gazan sand, yet darting threats against Lebanon and Lebanese. Using what? The bloods of Gazan women and children, by the destruction of mosques and churches in Gaza. Speaking of responsibility, it is the responsibility of every free nobleman in this world. Everyone, all and each, should shoulder his own. Arab and Muslim states must spare no effort to at least put an end to the war. If you are prevented from acting, listen to your religion, your conscience, your values. You should all work for the top prime goal to end. Condemnation statements are not enough. Civil relations. Recall ambassadors. We cannot condemn at the same time supply gas, oil, and food supplies to Israel. Regretfully enough, in the past wars, the Arab and Muslim states calling for cutting off oil supplies to the United States. Now, we are calling on the Arab and Muslim states to cut off oil and gas and food supplies from Israel. Stop your exports to Israel. I have read some reports coming from Israel satirically saying that 22 Arab and Muslim states cannot deliver a single truck of supplies to Gaza or allow the departure of a single patient. Look how weak, impotent we are. Gazans are telling the whole Arab and Muslim countries, we are not asking for your arms, weapons, or fighters, but do you not have the least of honor or dignity to deliver some aids? Presidents, scholars, ministers, many high-level and top-notch officials, aren't they capable of going themselves, staging sit-in on the borderline with Gaza? They can turn the borderline as a platform to address the whole world. Here, I do not wish to label others as traitors or whatever. Yet, we should not fall in despair. We should continue to call on our brothers. We should continue to place responsibility on the responsible, hoping at a point of time the whole humanity will listen to the sound of reason and their conscience may wake up. The Islamic resistance in Iraq started to shoulder its responsibility towards what's going on. They announced that they are going to engage into new measures. Our honorable brothers in Yemen, Ansarullah, the Yemeni people, the Yemeni army, the patient, brave Yemeni people, against all the threats, Western and American, took a number of initiatives, launched drones and missiles. Even if dropped, at the end of the day, they will reach and they will hit their targets. They will reach Eilat, the south of Palestine, the Israeli army bases to the south of Israel. We salute our fellow resistance fighters. Yet, on our Lebanese front, some claim that we are about to engage in the war. I'm telling you, we have been engaged in this battle since October the 8th. We have been in this battle since October the 8th. The Islamic resistance in Lebanon started operation the very next day after Al-Aqsa typhoon. We had no knowledge, honestly speaking, like any other party of the world. We moved into a second phase. The very following day, operations were launched from Sheba Farms and the other surrounding hills, then extended all across the borderline with the occupied Palestine. You have and are still closely monitoring the details about the daily operations. What's taking place on our front is very important and significant. Those who claim that Hezbollah should engage swiftly on an all-out war with the enemy might see what's taking place on the border as minimal. But if we look at what's taking place on our border objectively, we will find it sizable. Yet, I assure you, this will not be the end. This will not be sufficient. What's taking place on our Lebanese front, it is, on one hand, unprecedented since 1948, the creation of this Zionist entity, and the presence of Israeli posts on our borders. And since the illegal occupation settlements on the north of the occupied Palestine on the borderline with Lebanon. Since October 8th, what's taken place since then is unprecedented since then, that all the Israeli positions from the sea to the heights of Sheba Farms and Kafr Shub to reel under daily offensive operations, intensified operations, targeting these posts and what's in between. Tanks, armored vehicles, drones, clusters of personnel, and above all, technical installations, which are the eyes and ears of Israel. Since October 8th, the resistance in Lebanon is engaged in a true, genuine battle that can only be felt by those on the southern borderline. It is a true battle, different from all those in the past, separate from all those engaged by Lebanon, be it 2002 or 2006. Totally distinct and different battle in terms of tools, tactics, strategies, weapons, tools, and even targets. That, and a living proof to this fact is the number of our fallen martyrs who opted to remain on the forefronts. On Saturday, the 7th, immediately after Al-Aqsa Typhoon operation, the Israeli army started to bring back or retreat regular personnel from the borderline. Let me explain what are the achievements. When we speak about fallen martyrs on the Lebanese front, almost 57 fallen martyrs, including those of the Lebanese brigades, together with the fallen martyrs from Al-Qassam and Saraya al-Quds brigades in Lebanon, let alone the civilians. That number and that blood, we should know what's been achieved in order to know how to move forward. On the borderline from October 7th, the Israeli enemy started to pull out personnel from the borderline with Lebanon. Total moral collapse for Gaza and Gaza Strip that has been besieged for almost 20 years, very limited space. The Israeli army pulled out army personnel from West Bank, North occupied Palestine, and called them all towards the Gaza front. At the same time, they recalled or called the reservists The operation that started to escalate up to that of yesterday, all these operations force the Israeli enemy to maintain their personnel on the borderlines with Lebanon. If not, deploy further reinforcement. Adding to that, the elite task force that was supposed to head towards Gaza front, they are now deployed on the Lebanese borderline. This means our operations on the borderline force the Israeli enemy to concentrate their personnel and forces and equipment on our borders, which were supposed to deploy to Gaza. Some might claim that we are taking an adventure or gambling, yet it is worthy. Please, you just imagine if we restrict our action to rhetorics, statements of condemnation, then the Israeli enemy will deploy all its force towards Gaza. Now I have very exact figures of the total number of Israeli personnel, armed units, machinery, equipment, weapons. Yet I requested for a brief, easy to understand pieces of information. The Lebanese front is now forcing the Israelis to mass 1/3 of their entire army on our borderline. This is number one. The majority of this forces are the elite task force and regular personnel. Second, half of the Israeli naval capabilities are now anchored in opposite Haifa. Third, one quarter of the Air Force is dedicated to Lebanon. Half of their air defenses, the Iron Dome, etc., half of it, almost half of the air defenses is deployed around Lebanon. 1/3 of their all logistics were deployed to Lebanon. These are valid, accurate, exact numbers. I'm giving you easy to understand figures. Secondly, the displacement of tens of thousands of illegal settlers and evacuations of tens of thousands others. 43 illegal settlements were evacuated, and what is left now, nothing but army personnel, no more civilians. In the south, opposite Gaza, 58 illegal settlements were evacuated. All those evacuated from the south and north represent massive pressure economically, psychologically, and socially, and this will be a pressuring factor. A third issue, which is of no less importance, that the operations on the Lebanese borderline and Sheba farms have given rise to a state of fear and panic among the Israeli leadership, political and military, similarly to the Americans, which we will talk about later. This concern or fear that further escalation or an all-out war will exacerbate on this front, or they fear that the northern occupied Palestine front, the Israeli army, will fall into an all-out war. This is a very likely possibility. The Israelis are taking this into consideration, and it is part of their calculations. And this is reflected in all the rhetorics and statements made by the American, European, and even some Arab heads of state. That state of uncertainty, fear, and panic among the leaders of the enemy serve in two purposes. One, it causes our enemy to calculate their moves towards Lebanon. And here we speak about deterrence. We speak about genuine fear on the part of Israel. If in only one single operation against an Israeli post or an Israeli tank or cluster of personnel on the borderline, they wouldn't have taken the brunt. Yet, today the Israelis are taking all these blows, adjusting and calculating their moves very meticulously, simply for fear of the future. So I reiterate, our presence on the front, our operations and readiness, our daily operations on the front, cause our enemy to remain fearful, hesitant, and in panic. We have heard many statements from their ministers speaking about and banking upon the entire support provided by the US and West to wage a war on Lebanon. I assure you, to the enemy we say, if you think to assault Lebanon or take a preemptive strike against Lebanon, it will be the biggest act of foolness in the history of your existence. They think the Lebanese would fear of what they are witnessing taking place in Gaza. We have seen this since 1948, from Qana to Sabra and Shatila. On the contrary, the scenes we see in Gaza will turn us more resolved, more faithful to remain steadfast, defiant in resistance, and not to back or fall to our knees, no matter what the price is. The second most important issue, through this state of panic and uncertainty, the enemy must calculate their moves while acting in Gaza, and they are. These are some of the results of our operations in the south of Lebanon, let alone the amount of material and human losses suffered by the enemy over the past weeks. These operations in the south, the blood of our fallen martyrs and the sacrifices by the fellow fighters and our honest, noble men who remain in the south, or those who are temporarily displaced, they are all sacrificing to this battle that is worthy of each sacrifice. It is an expression of our solidarity and support to Gaza and the Gazans, by the noble blood of the fallen martyrs, by standing steadfast. We are doing all what we can to alleviate and lessen the pressure on them, as the enemy is acting insanely, militarily and politically. Here we come to the most important point. Let the world know. For weeks, communication, pressures, even from day one. If you start any operation and if you open a front in the south, all these American fleets have come for you. You will be shelled by the US warplanes. This was been told to us on October 8th. And in some details, when some Palestinian resistance fighters infiltrated from Lebanon, following the first operation by them, we received a threat that the US warplanes will bombard Lebanon. I assure you, many resistance fighters have infiltrated and many will continue to infiltrate. The threats we receive will not change our position. Therefore, we started our operation on that front, and the future of this front, any escalation and any development of whatever nature are hinged on two things, nothing more: the development of events in Gaza. It is the first factor, the development of events in Gaza. That's why this front will devolve according to the nature of development in Gaza and what is required. The second factor that is in play is the conduct and the demeanor of the Zionist enemy towards Lebanon. And here, once again, I warn you not to go further, as many civilians have fallen as martyrs. And this will bring us to the same equation: a civilian for a civilian. Again, the demeanors of the enemy against Lebanon will be a factor in play. I am speaking openly, candidly, and at the same time with ambiguity, constructive ambiguity. All scenarios are open. All scenarios are open on our Lebanese southern front. I reiterate, all scenarios are open. All options are laid out, and we can adopt any at any point of time. We all together must be prepared, ready, and available to all these scenarios and options to come. To the Americans, the United States administration, I say, darting your threats on Lebanon and resistance in the region is pointless. Not the resistance movement or the resistance countries. It has reached a point that we received message that if you continue to launch operations in the south, it will not only bombard Lebanon, but would also bombard Iran. Can you imagine? To the Americans, I say, darting your threats on us in Lebanon will be pointless. Your naval fleets in the Mediterranean will not and cannot cause us to fear. To you, I openly and candidly say that your fleet that you are using as a threat, we have prepared for them what it takes. You, the Americans, remember your defeats in Lebanon Iraq, Afghanistan, and your humiliating withdrawal from Afghanistan. Those who defeated you in Lebanon at the early 80s are still alive, backed and supported by their children and grandchildren. If the US and Western politics are calling for steering away from escalation, this cannot be achieved by threats against honest, noble resistance fighters defending the defenseless. The only course is to end the war on Gaza. Here it is. Israel, your servant, you, the Americans, are capable of ending the aggression on Gaza because it is you that you started. If you wish to steer away from a regional war, you must hurriedly act towards ending the aggression on Gaza. You, the Americans, are fully aware if an all-out war is broken, your fleet will be of no good. Your aerial warplanes will be pointless. You will pay a heavy price by your interests, your fleet, and your personnel. Now, today, the whole world, in the name of these spilled bloods, in the name of the defenseless civilians, in the name of churches, mosques, and hospitals, in the name of humanity, in the name of human values, virtues, the whole world is required to act genuinely and swiftly to end the Israeli aggression on Gaza. As the horizon is looming to our fellow Palestinian people and resistance fighter, I say, since the creation of the resistance fighter following the creation of the Israeli Zionist regime, we have been fighting a war of fortitude. We haven't reached a knockout victory. We still need time to be more realistic. We are winning victory by points, not knockout victory. This is what happened in 2000, 2002, and 2006 in Lebanon. And this is what happened by the Gazans, and similarly by the resistance fighter in West Bank, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Fortitude, patience, bravery. This is what we have, and this is our strength. That is what the enemy lacks. This what the enemy wants. Victims crawl from underneath the rubble and say, we all sacrifice to the service of the cause. Do you believe that this Israeli people that were collected from the corners of the world of diaspora, have you ever heard any of them saying that my blood, my beloved ones, and my home can be sacrificed for Israel? None. We should remain standing fast in resolve and fortitude to prevent the enemy from achieving its targets. We should all now work together to end the war and aggression on Gaza. Then we act for the resistance in Gaza to prevail. First of all, based on our firm conviction of the divine promise given to us by Almighty, the omnipotent Allah, that we will win victory. This is a promise, a divine promise given by Almighty Allah, the Omnipotent. No matter what the sacrifice is, yet we should be deservedly worthy of it. And this is proven by our sacrifices and our blood. And personally speaking, and based on my personal experience with his Khamenei, who repeated more than one occasion that we all firmly believe in this divine promise, Gaza will triumph, Palestine will triumph, Palestine will prevail. He himself repeated the same words to us in July war when there was no victory looming in the horizon. And to our fellow brothers in Gaza, despite all the sacrifice, to all the Palestinian people, all the resistance peoples of the region, all those whose hearts are shaken by the blood of the children of Gaza, our unity, patience, fortitude, and sacrifice we offer in blood to the service of the cause of God will be rewarded by nothing but emphatic victory. Today, as we honor and celebrate the memory of the fallen martyrs, we will meet soon to celebrate the victory of Gaza and the Gazans and resistance fighters in Gaza. And may God's peace and blessings be upon you all.